within a few years after the 1971 Congress, a radically different approach to explaining the Tauroctony began to be pursued by a number of scholars. It is not an exaggeration to say that this approach has in just the past few years succeeded in completely revolutionizing the study of the Mithraic mysteries. According to the proponents of this interpretation, the Tauroctony is not, as Kant and his followers claimed, a pictorial representation of an Iranian myth, but is rather something utterly different, namely, an astronomical star map. This remarkable explanation of the Tauroctony is based on two facts. First, every figure found in the standard Tauroctony has a parallel among a group of constellations located along a continuous band in the sky. The bull is paralleled by Taurus, the dog by Canis Minor, the snake by Hydra, the raven by Corvus, and the scorpion by Scorpio. Second, Mithraic iconography in general is pervaded by explicit astronomical imagery. The zodiac, planets, sun, moon, and stars are often portrayed in Mithraic art. Note for example the stars around the head of Mithras in the carving of the Tauroctony. In addition, numerous ancient authors speak about astronomical subjects in connection with Mithraism. In the writings of the Neoplatonic philosopher Porphyry, for example, we find recorded a tradition that the cave, which is depicted in the Tauroctony, and which the underground Mithraic temples were designed to imitate, was intended to be an image of the cosmos. Given the general presence of astronomical motifs in Mithraic art and ideology, the parallel noted above between the Tauroctony figures and constellations is unlikely to be coincidence. Today we know that the Earth rotates on its axis once a day, and revolves around the Sun once a year. However, Greco-Roman astronomy at the time of the Mithraic mysteries was based on a so-called geocentric cosmology, according to which the Earth was fixed and immovable at the center of the universe and everything went around it. In this cosmology the universe itself was imagined as being bounded by a great sphere to which the stars, arranged in the various constellations, were attached. So, while we today understand that the Earth rotates on its axis once every day, in antiquity it was believed instead that once a day the great sphere of the stars rotated around the Earth, spinning on an axis that ran from the sphere's north pole to its south pole. As it spun, the cosmic sphere was believed to carry the Sun along with it, resulting in the apparent movement of the Sun around the Earth once a day. In addition to this daily rotation of the cosmic sphere carrying the Sun along with it, the ancients also attributed a second, slower motion to the Sun. While today we know that the Earth revolves around the Sun once a year, in antiquity it was believed instead that once a year the Sun, which was understood as being closer to the Earth than the sphere of the stars, traveled around the Earth, tracing a great circle in the sky against the background of the constellations. This circle traced by the Sun during the course of the year was known as the zodiac, a word meaning living figures, which was a reference to the fact that as the Sun moved along the circle of the zodiac it passed in front of 12 different constellations, which were represented as having various animal and human forms. In the geocentric cosmology the Sun was believed to move along this circle around the Earth once a year. The other cosmic circle shown here, parallel to the Earth's equator, is called the celestial equator. Because the ancients believed in the real existence of the great sphere of the stars, its various parts, such as its axis and poles, played a central role in the cosmology of the time. In particular, one important attribute of the sphere of the stars was much better known in antiquity than it is today, namely, its equator, known as the celestial equator. Just as the Earth's equator is defined as a circle around the Earth equidistant from the north and south poles, so the celestial equator was understood as a circle around the sphere of the stars equidistant from the sphere's poles. The circle of the celestial equator was seen as having a particularly special importance because of the 2 points where it crosses the circle of the zodiac, for these 2 points are the equinoxes, that is, the places where the Sun, in its movement along the zodiac, appears to be on the first day of spring and the first day of autumn. Thus the celestial equator was responsible for defining the seasons, and hence had a very concrete significance in addition to its abstract astronomical meaning. As a result, the celestial equator was often described in ancient popular literature about the stars. Plato, for example, in his dialogue Timaeus said that when the creator of the universe first formed the cosmos, he shaped its substance in the form of the letter X, representing the intersection of the two celestial circles of the zodiac and the celestial equator. This cross-shaped symbol was often depicted in ancient art, to indicate the cosmic sphere. In fact, one of the most famous examples of this motif is a Mithraic stone carving showing the so-called lion-headed god, whose image is often found in Mithraic temples, standing on a globe that is marked with the cross representing the two circles of the zodiac and the celestial equator. One final fact about the celestial equator is crucial, namely, that it does not remain fixed, but rather possesses a slow movement known as the precession of the equinoxes. This movement, we know today, is caused by a wobble in the Earth's rotation on its axis. As a result of this wobble, the celestial equator appears to change its position over the course of thousands of years. This movement is known as the precession of the equinoxes, because its most easily observable effect is a change in the positions of the equinoxes, the places where the celestial equator crosses the zodiac. In particular, the precession results in the equinoxes moving slowly backward along the zodiac, passing through one zodiacal constellation every 2,160 years and through the entire zodiac every 25,920 years. Thus, for example, today the spring equinox is in the constellation of Pisces, but in a few hundred years it will be moving into Aquarius, the so-called dawning of the age of Aquarius. More to our point here, in Greco-Roman times the spring equinox was in the constellation Aries, which it had entered around 2000 before Christ. It is this phenomenon of the precession of the equinoxes that provides the key to unlocking the secret of the astronomical symbolism of the Mithraic Tauroctony. For the constellations pictured in the standard Tauroctony have one thing in common, namely, they all lay on the celestial equator, as it was positioned during the epoch immediately preceding the Greco-Roman age of Aries. During that earlier age, which we may call the age of Taurus, lasting from around 4000 to 2000 before Christ, the celestial equator passed through Taurus the bull. The spring equinox of that epoch, Canis Minor the dog, Hydra the snake, Corvus the raven, and Scorpio the scorpion, the autumn equinox, that is, precisely the constellations represented in the Mithraic Tauroctony. In fact, we may even go one step further. For during the age of Taurus, when the equinoxes were in Taurus and Scorpio, the two solstices, which are also shifted by the precession, were in Leo the lion and Aquarius the water bearer. In the diagram of the age of Taurus, Leo and Aquarius are the northernmost and southernmost constellations of the zodiacal circle respectively. These were the positions of the summer and winter solstices in that age. It is thus of great interest to note that in certain regions of the Roman Empire a pair of symbols was sometimes added to the Tauroctony, namely, a lion and a cup. These symbols must represent the constellations Leo and Aquarius, the locations of the solstices during the age of Taurus. Thus all of the figures found in the Tauroctony represent constellations that had a special position in the sky during the age of Taurus. The Mithraic Tauroctony, then, was apparently designed as a symbolic representation of the astronomical situation that obtained during the age of Taurus. But what religious significance could this have had, so that the Tauroctony could have come to form the central icon of a powerful cult?